Hello and welcome to Coffee with Dr. Carla. I'm Dr. Carla and this is Kevin Anderson, and we are so happy that you are here with us. Our goal today is to talk about some mental health issues and hopefully reduce or end the stigma that's surrounding them. So I know one of the things that seems to be going around, and especially like maybe like with memes or even people talking about it, is like, oh my gosh, that person's so negative, or everything's so negative. People that are having a hard time finding the silver lining or the positive piece of it. So I'm curious, what is your take on this seemingly plethora of negative emotion that seems to be floating around these days?
Well, first off, I think it's a lot of reactivity,
Mm-hmm.
not a lot of conscious thought and awareness on what's actually going on. And it seems like with technology, and especially social media, the increase in people using it, that they tend to gravitate towards putting their opinion out even when it's not warranted. So in person, people avoid conflict at most costs, right?
Right.
Social media has given people a voice with which they can voice negative opinion or criticize things or people. They wouldn't normally do that
Well,
to
they have a
someone's
place to hide
face.
behind.
100%.
Right.
And I think that's just kind of sparked some internal things with people. Um, I don't, and I also think it's programming from a young age that we get indoctrinated with, whether it's school or parents or whatever, and or religion can be very fear based. A lot of negative emotion gets thrown at us, and not a lot of positive stuff.
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, typically when I think about emotions, I think that all of them can be beneficial, right? All emotions can be useful at one point or another. Um, I know that there was one point, early career where I, would mistakenly say good emotions and bad emotions, but that puts a moral judgment on emotions. And the reality of it is,
It's subjective.
and it's very subjective,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. And the reality of it is, we're really talking about comfortable and uncomfortable,
Mm-hmm.
pleasant or unpleasant, to be truthful. But there is a place to be angry. Like there's times when being angry is warranted,
Can be
right?
useful.
Yeah, and there's times where being overly happy might feel uncomfortable, right?
Yeah.
So like it's not so cut
And
and
we tend to
dry.
label everything in society. It
Sure.
needs a title. The way that I look, and I agree with you, all emotions are an experience, and I believe we came here to live this life to experience all of these things. And the way that I look at emotion is vibrationally.
Okay.
So you have very low vibing emotions and very high vibing emotions, and we feed off of each other. Right now we're feeding off of each other's vibration, and when you're in a situation where it's a lot of negativity, it starts to impact you or can impact you. So I think one of the tricks, I guess, in life is to try to raise up to a more positive emotional state in general. And I've been through, everything, all the labels with mental illness, and feeling like I was walking around with a shadow following me, making my life miserable. Had trouble, can't sleep, can't eat, just why am I here? And as you try to pull yourself out of that, I feel like something pulls you back, right? It's almost like you're addicted to feeling these negative feelings, and um, it's it's hard. It can be hard to pull out.
Do you have a sense, or you know, because it sounds like you're speaking from personal experience? Do you have a sense as to why that addiction to those negative emotions was present, or what? How was it useful? Because I mean, at the core of things, I mean, I know I've evolved, but my initial training was in the behaviorist way of thinking, and so I still come from the idea that all behavior serves a purpose, right? So, how might that addiction to those negative thoughts, those negative emotions, have been useful or seemed useful, at the time?
I think that some negative
Yeah.
emotions can be useful. You know, if we're in a relationship and we get hurt, you know, that can be useful because we're feeling bad. You know, it's bringing to our attention, making us think, is this what we want or whatever? So it kind of starts sparking
Sure.
some thought. But in general, you know, what creates that addiction to negative emotion? And I think it starts with understanding that our thoughts create our emotions. You know, the thoughts we have run certain pathways, release certain chemicals, and then we're feeling the effects of those chemicals, and that's what we call emotion. And throughout life, we become more proficient in things because we build neural pathways that form neural networks
Right.
over time. That's why when you start driving a car, you have to focus on every little thing in the beginning, and now you can go from A to B without a conscious thought, it seems like. And
And hopefully not get in an accident.
yes,
Right.
but this can also, it causes issue when you talk about things like habit change, behavioral change, thought change and stuff, because you've already built these pathways and now you're talking about building new ones. And one of the best analogies I've heard is like it's water down running down a hill,
Okay.
where it carves a path going down.
Ah.
And that path is the same old stuff that you've been doing, same old thoughts, same old recurring emotions you've been having for years. And in order for that water to naturally drain down that more positive path that you desire, you have to work on getting it to go down that path because it's always going to take the path of least resistance.
I was thinking the exact same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So you have to build new neural networks, more positive ones, or, you know, I feel like emotion, it's secondary. It can be. And you know, going through some of the dark times that I talked about, I had no reason to be angry or upset or anything. I had a good, normal life, but I didn't feel good.
Okay.
And it wasn't until I started doing some certain practices like meditation and stuff where I started learning more about me, and I realized like the reason I'm having these emotions is because I'm thinking thoughts that are creating
Right.
this negative emotion. So it was about repatterning a lot of that. And the more that you do implement change and really push hard to change how you behave, the actions you take, the thoughts you have, it gets easier and easier with time. It's just about taking that first step. And you know, change is so uncomfortable for people. We resist change at all costs, but the more that you do change and implement little things in your life, the better and easier it gets. One simple trick that I tell everyone to do is change one thing every day.
Okay.
So even with your morning routine, you know, if you wake up, brush your teeth, shower, make the bed, whatever, change up
The
the
order you do
process
it. Yeah. Yeah.
exactly
Okay.
because you're going to think more consciously about it, and you're also implementing change so that now change becomes easier.
I actually read a study that said if you typically eat right-handed, eat left-handed, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
now we're using a different set of neural networks.
Exactly.
It's interesting, and I wish I could recall the exact number of seconds here, but there was a study I just heard about that said that a negative thought, negative set of circumstances or whatever only takes, and I want to say 6 seconds to register in your brain, but positive ones take closer to like 10 to 15 seconds to register in your brain. So, of course, as we're going about our day, the negative ones get in there much faster. It's like those parking spots are filling up faster, and by the time the positive one gets in there or the pleasant one, then wait, there's no more parking spots left.
Yep.
Move out of the way, right?
And I wonder in general, you know, the the pathways we use most frequently are the first ones to fire in any
There is
given
that too. Yeah.
situation, right? So if you're used to responding to something, or I guess reacting would be a better word, with anger,
Right.
no matter what goes on externally, that first pathway to fire is going to be that angry pathway. So I wonder if that has part to do with it. But then also to go back to our addiction and negative emotion, um, we experience life, and it's when something bad happens, I feel like people have a tendency to really analyze what just occurred and why am I feeling this way and blah, blah, blah. And when something positive happens, what do? We live in the moment. We enjoy it. It feels good. We're not analyzing it forever, wondering, why do I feel good about this? So I feel like we put a lot more attention and effort into negative emotions in general, not just feeling them, but analyzing, why did this affect me this way? And what are we doing? I mean, in return, it's more negative built up pathways.
Right.
So,
And I think also to even take that thought a little bit farther, there's the expectation that positive, that beneficial, that good, whatever, however pleasant experience should have happened. So for instance, one of the key things when we're talking about parenting. We talked a lot about this when I was teaching, but it applies to parenting as well. You should praise your child, 5 times as many times as you correct them.
mhm,
Well, the big thing that I often heard was, well, are you telling me that when they take out the garbage and that's their chore, I should praise them? And I'm like, yes, but that the expectation is that they should do that. And I said, but a simple thank you is praise. It
mhm.
doesn't have to be, oh my God, honey, you're so good at taking out the garbage. It could be,
Right.
hey, you know,
Even just acknowledgement.
Joe, I appreciate the fact that you took out the garbage. Oh, I'm glad you remembered that because I completely forgot that. All those little things are praise, right?
Yep.
And so I think part of it also is that there's this expectation that some of these things that are more pleasant or more neutral in nature should be happening. Bad word, but and so then we overlook it because why would we get ourselves all caught up in that,
Yeah.
right? So expectationally, how that falls out.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, in your experience, what was your greatest obstacle in kind of shifting your thoughts from that more addictive behavior towards those, less useful emotions into, more useful, more positive emotions?
Um, Anytime I have a conversation like this, I always bring up meditation, and people that know me kind of make fun of me because I
Okay.
bring it up in every situation with any problem. To me, it's as close as there is to something that covers everything,
Okay.
every part of wellness. So that was a huge
So
step
that's a
for me.
tool that you use to kind of begin the practice of shifting that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Was there something that did you found difficult or an obstacle that made it harder to do that? What were some of the things that maybe got in your way to going to the things that you like? If you know full well that meditation's useful,
Hmm.
were there some things that maybe got in your way?
Yeah, expectations.
Ah,
When you start a practice, I feel like it's important to make it about you. Do what resonates with you, whichever form of it there is, because there's a million ways to do it. And I think that people hear about someone else doing it and get their story of how they do it and then want to have the same experience, where I feel like it's very subjective and it should be more about you than anyone else.
yeah.
And then, also just doing it. It's a practice. People, I still talk to a ton of people I meet, and they're like, I can never do that. I can't sit there still and close my eyes for 5 minutes. It's like we should be able to, like you should be able to sit and not have to worry. And
But
um,
what about 1 minute? Can you notice your breath for 1 minute?
right.
And when you become proficient at 1 minute, then you try 90 seconds.
I think the most important thing is just making it consistent. Once a day, 1 minute. Do that. And set goals for yourself. And that was the number one thing that helped me start to understand how my mind operated, because we always have, we enter default mode network and we're in autopilot all day long, and we're doing the same thing that we've done for years. And this kind of breaks away from that a little bit, where you have time to process. You start to not react to external events that excite you, but choose a response instead, because you have that split second now of calm in order to process. And it helps so much with emotions too, just to be able to choose and live more consciously and live more aware, be more present. A lot of people use the word be present, the words be present nowadays, and it's true. We spend what, 90% of our life thinking about our past.
Yeah, I heard a term last week at a conference. She was talking about mind tripping, and I'm thinking, oh, are we going to talk about
Okay,
LSD? What
let's
are we
go.
talking about here? And she says, no, mind tripping is when you're in the past, reliving these horrible things and being miserable, or you're in the future, catastrophizing and worrying.
Yep.
We hardly ever stay present, right? So I thought that was interesting.
And it's the only moment in time we ever truly experience. We
Ex-
can never be in the past or in the future. We're always in an everlasting present moment.
exactly. So a couple times today, I heard you use both the words react and respond. Um, I know that for me, I really distinguish the difference between those two with my clients. And the way you discussed it, I clearly saw that
Mm.
was there. But perhaps could you be a little bit more explicit
Sure.
how you see the difference between reacting and responding to a situation?
It's quite simple in my opinion. Reaction is automatic, and a response is conscious.
Yeah.
You know,
Okay.
it's the main thing. Very
Awesome.
difficult to.
Yeah, very difficult to do,
Yeah.
right? Exactly. All right. So, well, I appreciate you coming, and
Sure.
and um, clearly this is a conversation that could go on
Yeah.
forever without a problem. But remember, you can change your thoughts and discover your potential and transform your life by focusing on your overall well-being. So, until next time, continue working on being the best you possible. Bye, everyone.